friends. Welcome to yet another episode of Girl Same the Podcast. I am your host, Michaela Daniels. We are going to dive on in to a question that I just am so deeply I love this topic. I love the question of how to ask good questions. Why do we ask questions? Why is that important? I genuinely believe with everything in me that questions are a gateway to being able to understand people deeply. I really think you can go from 0 to 100 asking the right questions with people. And so if you're like, I want to deepen my relationships with people in general, I want to get past the surface with certain people, then let's dive on in and talk about question asking and talk about why it is important. I think just to begin and start, I believe that this is something that we as a society struggle with because we are so connected to these right here, our phones, and we just have everything at our fingertips. And it's like, no, I can find the answers to anything. Any questions I have, I can just ask ChatGPT, or ask Google, ask the web, and it can just populate immediately. And so we don't even ask for help anymore. We don't even ask for directions. We don't even ask for just basic things of and to people, because now we have redirected where our questions go in a general sense. And so I think if we don't practice doing those things and even know how to ask questions to people of just the basic life things, then how are we going to know how to ask the deeper questions? It is a learned skill that I believe is very easy. If you haven't listened to our hospitality podcast, go back and listen to that podcast. But I think this ties very well of, man, like you welcome people into your home and then they're there, now what? You ask someone over and you're like, okay, you're here. So now what do I do? You sit down and you ask them questions and you learn about their life. And so, yeah, I think questions matter deeply because questions show intentionality. But question asking is this like, hey, I see you and I want to go a little bit deeper with you and I want to know your heart and understand you more. Asking questions communicates value. It communicates to just that like, hey, I am slowing myself down. I am putting my phone down. I am putting other things aside to engage with you and to hear you and to hear your heart. And yeah, and that's what questions get to be. It's just a little moment, a piece of just being like, wait a minute, let me take time to just to get to know a little bit more and a little bit deeper of what is going on with inside of you and who you really are deeply. And so I think that sometimes we're like, okay, like what's the big deal? Like, okay, questions, yeah, we get it. Like ask people questions. But I think something that helps me and has helped me in my deepening of like asking questions really is just looking at Jesus's ministry. If you look in the New Testament, it is just riddled with Jesus asking questions. And he wasn't just asking questions to ask questions, like to get to know people. Like this is the King of the universe, the Most High God, who comes down from heaven to earth. He knows everything. Like he's not asking questions to gain knowledge. He's asking questions to help reveal people's hearts, to help them like truly share their deepest need, to help people know and understand like with Jesus, like you are safe and seen. And so we get to reflect that in our question asking. Just throughout the Bible, Jesus asks a lot, like so many questions. He asked the disciples, like, who do you say I am? And that's this question of like, what's my identity? Like I want you to state and know my identity and to understand who I am, and not just like, oh, you're a good guy. Oh yeah, you're nice. Oh yeah, you heal. You do good things. Like, you know, he's like, no, what is the deep like understanding that you have of me? And he's asking that to reveal their hearts and to reveal like their understanding of him. But one of my favorite questions that Jesus asks is he's healing a man, and the man like comes up to Jesus, and I believe he's blind, and Jesus is like, what do you want me to do for you? And I think that this question is Jesus knew. He's not asking to say like, oh, what can I do for you, sir? Like, how can I help you today? Like, no, Jesus knows like the man's deepest needs, but Jesus is asking to give this man like the space to be like, no, voice your deepest need to me so that I can fulfill it. And that's the beautiful thing of the way that Jesus asked questions. And for us who are not Jesus, we are not necessarily asking questions to be like, well, I want to hear your deepest needs so I can fulfill it. Like, no, honestly, we can't fulfill the deepest needs within the friends and the people that we ask questions to, but we can show them that, you know, they have permission to share, and permission to be, and permission to feel safe, and to be vulnerable without any judgment and without any condemnation. So I love this space of like, we get to be like the Lord. We get to reflect intentionality. And too, man, as I was thinking through this topic, when did I start falling in love with question asking? And I really think, like high school, I loved asking questions and things, but I grew up with the same kids. Like I went to a school that I was with a small group of kids, like 40 of us, and I grew up with them. And so I learned, like, towards the end of high school, especially, to start asking good questions and go deeper and things like that. But I really think college, because it was really easy just to be like, okay, what's your major? Where are you from? Like all of those things. But then I got stale really very quickly, especially with people that I was like, no, I want to know you. Like, you're cool. Like, I would meet some girl who I was like, oh my gosh, like you're like, there's something about you that's cool that I want to be friends with you in that way. And so I started asking just all the things. And literally, I remember I had one friend in particular that we would just go back and forth, like just like tennis with questions. And I'm not talking about these like, what's the deepest part of you? Like, what makes you you? One of the questions, and I'll never forget this one because I just think it's like cute, is if you were a tree, what kind of tree would you be? And just the things that make you think of like, oh, what kind of tree would I be? And my answer is, oh dang, what's the name of those little, the bonsai trees? Yes, like the little tiny trees that are like full big like trees, like they look like big oak trees or whatever, but they're small. Because I feel like that's like me, of like just like this like full big like person, and like with like a lot of depth and branches and leaves and all the things package. I'm only 5 feet tall. Questions can lead us obviously, like I said, to knowing people, but also just lead us to being like, oh, like let me self-reflect in the question asking of like, man, what is this about me? What kind of tree am I? You know, and that, yes, can go deep, or it can just stay shallow. And so I think that college was so helpful in me learning that. And then after college, of course, you get out of college and you're like, okay, I'm here and I'm an adult and I'm a big girl and I have a job. And so then, you know, you meet people, and then the first, you know, couple questions: where are you from? How long have you lived here? What do you do? What are your hobbies? Like, that's kind of boring. Good to know, you know, in a general sense, it's exciting to know. But there are certain people in my life. I have one friend in particular. I remember I had met him and we had like gotten to know each other over like a weekend and stuff. And then it was probably like 2 or 3 like days into like hanging out with him and getting to know him. And then he was like, wait, you're a nurse? And I love that, because I do think that there's a space in which there's this automatic like, oh, like you were defined by this job and this is the first thing that is put out about you and all the things. And I was like, yeah, I'm a nurse. And he got to know so many other aspects of my life before he got to know that, which I think is so important and so beautiful too, of I am not just my job and you are not just your job. And yes, your job's important, and yes, there's other things about you that's important, and you know, it's cool that I'm from Texas. Those aren't the things that make up who I am. Like ultimately, those are not my like foundation. My foundation is so many other things. Like as we all are, so multifaceted. And so, you know, what does it look like to go a little bit deeper and get to know another facet and another aspect and area of people's lives? And so I think with that, be vulnerable. Please be vulnerable with me and share secrets and like those types of things. But I just want to get to know people in a not creepy way. My advice to you is just literally start by asking open-ended questions. Don't ask, did you have a good weekend? Because then what's the answer to that? Yes or no. And you, of course, can be like, oh, well, why? Yes. But, or just being like, what was the best thing about your weekend? What was the best part about your day? How has this week been better than last week, maybe? Or how has this week been worse than last week? How has this week been different? Just going in different directions, of leaving it open-ended. And that causes people to reflect and to think a little bit deeper, not just like, fine. I remember my mom used to ask me every day when I was little of like, how was school? It was fine. And that's all you have to give? Yeah. like, and that would be my response every day of just like, fine, yeah. Not like, oh, well, what made school different today than yesterday? Or what was an aspect of your teacher today that you felt like you learned differently from her? And that's a little bit of a big question to ask a 6-year-old in kindergarten or whatever. But just the aspect of how can we just slightly rephrase some of these questions that we ask all the time, and like just get to know a little bit better and a little bit deeper of like the substance underneath the surface. Because man, we hate camping out in the surface. We might live in it because it's comfortable, because it's what we're used to, because it's how we operate as a society. But ultimately, it is something that we don't like. It is something that we like seek to be known and seek to know others, but we just don't know how to go about it. And so like, friend, like, let me give you some tools. Let me give you some helpful like tips and information of like, first and foremost, sometimes you have to come to a space of like, I'm asking a question and I'm not necessarily expecting a response in return. And I know that feels hard. Sometimes you'll ask a question, you'll be like, man, that was a great question. And people will be like, I don't know. Or they'll say, I don't really want to answer that. And then the conversation's over and it's shut down. But you know what you did? You tried, you put forth effort, and it is okay if someone was like, no, not really into that. Like, thanks, but no thanks. That's okay. You also might ask a question and someone might not say, how about you? And so do not ask a question thinking about your answer. Do not ask a question thinking about, well, this is how I want to contribute to the conversation. No. Question asking opens up this beautiful door of something that we do not do and practice in the slightest in our society in this day and age in the United States of America, and that is listening. We are horrible listeners. I think that is in our lack of listening, then we have lack of understanding and lack of seeing people. And so I think that's just a space, to be completely honest, where there's so much dissension, there's so much disunity because we don't want to listen. Because while the other person's speaking, we're thinking of how we can fight back, and we're thinking of how we can challenge and how we can be right. Not thinking of like, no, like, am I listening? Am I hearing what this person is saying and seeking to understand and grasp what they're communicating so that I can hear their position and I can hear, and I'm not even talking about politics, I'm just talking about in general and just life things. And again, you don't have to hear how a person responds and automatically just be like, oh, well, like, it's fine, like, I'll just agree with them. No, you can disagree, but listen to what they're saying. Stop, think, and then respond with another question, a follow-up question, or respond with like, I appreciate you sharing where you're at on that. I actually don't agree. I actually disagree with you. However, I appreciate hearing your point of view in that regard. And I think that's holding human life at a high regard. That is choosing to say, man, like, this person's life is valuable, therefore it's worth listening to, even if I disagree, even if I don't like what they're saying, it's worth listening to. And so I think that one of the key points of being able to ask good questions is being able to listen well, because you'll find too, as you listen to people, you'll be able to ask better questions the better you listen. And so if someone starts responding, you're hearing more and more of their heart, and you're hearing like deep things, and you're like, oh my gosh, they just like kind of said something pretty profound, or they kind of just shared a little bit of like some trauma or a little bit of share with people. And so like you get to steward that well by being like, wow, thank you for sharing that. If you don't mind, can I hear a little bit more about this period of your life that you're referring to? And man, and it's just building connection and building community and building continuous trust. But the foundation of the trust and the foundation of question asking absolutely has to be listening. The next tip that I have of being able to ask good questions is like, yes, first asking open-ended questions, but then two, asking follow-up questions. But you cannot ask follow-up questions if you're not listening to the response. If you're hearing them say something and you're like, oh, I don't like that. Why did they just say that? Well, this is what I think. Like, wait, no. Like, you're actually like genuinely kind of blocking off any more of the conversation being able to blossom, and so consumed with just saying the right thing or saying things that are interesting or profound or deep that make people think that you're impressive, that you are not willing to actually take the time to stop and to believe that no, this person has something good and beautiful and like worthwhile to offer, that I have the opportunity and privilege to listen to, and to create a space that makes them feel so safe. Like, man, what if we did that? What if we put our phones down, like flipped our phones upside down for 20 minutes and just asked and just sought to know a little bit more about, no, I don't want to just know what you do for a living. I want to know what influenced you to decide to do this for a living. I want to know what makes you aside from your job and where you live. I want to know the parts and aspects of your life. Like a question I love is, what aspects of your parents do you believe that you have like inherited, and do you think that's a good or a bad thing? I want to pick up all of the parts of you so I can have a full picture. Because sometimes we create a full picture of our minds of people when we only have a sliver, because we don't ask questions further. We hear something they say that we might disagree with. We hear something they say that we're just like, oh, okay, moving on, whatever, that's annoying. And we don't dig deeper. So then we believe and we focus and we have a picture of someone when it's really just 15% of who they are. We don't have the full like 3D understanding and picture. And so then we just base our assumptions and our ideas of this person based off of one small thing, when we could have known them deeper if we would have just stopped to ask a couple more questions. So I just want to encourage you, friends, that it's not hard. I think it takes laying down our pride. I think it takes being a little bit courageous and being different than what the culture is telling us and calling us to do. It's such a gift and an opportunity to get to truly just connect with people. And it's easy. It's so easy. And so I just want you to be curious. I think that question asking is about listening. It's about choosing to open your ears over your mouth. But then also it's choosing to be curious again. And I don't think that we are curious people really anymore. We choose not to wonder. And when we do wonder, we just run to our phones so that we can have quick, easy answers and quick, easy access. But what if we stopped and paused? It's easy to just not do these things and to just brush past it and things like that. But you know what you're missing? You are missing an aspect of getting to be like Jesus. You're missing an aspect of getting to have actual deep human connection. Because what you actually are longing for when you run to ChatGPT, who can respond to you with this like cute little answer based off of how it's gotten to know you and has formulated like answers to curate the way that you already ask questions. Because that's not real life. Like real life isn't, oh, like I'm going to ask this person a question and they're going to respond in the way that I want them to. And so I want us to like think about what the internet and what social media and what AI and all of these things are doing to our brains. They're teaching us that when we ask questions, that we're just going to get the answers that we want and the answers that fit and curate our needs. But sometimes we're not. And sometimes, man, we're going to ask questions and people are going to say stuff and we're like, I don't know what to do with that. Or, whoa, I feel challenged. Or, whoa, I'm convicted. Like that hit me like deeply. I was just feeling like there were some things in my life specifically that I was like, ooh, I think that this probably isn't the best. And I think that I probably need to work on some stuff. And I think that I need someone to look at me and to say, yeah, you need to work on that. And so I just texted a friend flat out and was like, okay, be honest. Is this an issue that you're seeing in my life? And is this something that I need to work on? And she was like, yeah, it is. And I got to just be honest and say that I'm feeling this struggle. I'm feeling this tension. I'm feeling this pull. I'm feeling like I'm not doing the best job in these areas. And I want to do better. And man, what a gift. What a gift that she didn't just say what I wanted to hear, which is like, no, you're doing great. You're awesome. Like, Michaela, oh my gosh. Like, everything you do is amazing. Like, no, because that's not what I need. And that's not beneficial. So anyways, that was kind of a bit of a detour and a rabbit trail a little bit, but all of that to say that I just believe that practicing this habit makes us get to practice being human. And being human is not receiving the responses that we want. Being human is not getting what we want all the time. Being human is not this like, oh, okay, like, yeah, all is well all the time and I just feel great about myself and I'm going to ask questions and I'm going to get the answers that I need that are going to benefit me. No, being human is, how do I go out of my way? Like, if we really want to look like Jesus, like really deeply want to look like Jesus, how do I go out of my way to seek out someone, to know them, to ask them questions, to get to their heart, so that they might know God, so that they might know a little bit more of who they are, so that might know a little bit more that they're loved and that they're known. I think so many of our questions have gone from like face to face to phone. And that is such a deterrent to the kingdom of God advancing. I believe that 100%. I believe that the kingdom of God can advance when we open our mouths to ask questions and then close them and open our ears to listen and to receive and to hear how our friends are doing and where our people are at and how they're struggling and how maybe we've upset them and how maybe we've hurt them. Like those things that we don't want to have those conversations because that's hard, right? Jesus is living water. And that's the beautiful thing of questions as well, is that I don't think it takes too many questions can get you from 0 to 100 in terms of having spiritual conversations with people and asking people, you know, where do you put your hope and what does that look like and what does that mean? And so if you're take anything from this at all, man, like maybe question asking is the means in which you can engage with people to have gospel conversations that you feel afraid to have. Maybe you're like, I'm pretty good at asking questions. Like I'm pretty intentional and things like that. But maybe it's question asking and being a little bit more creative in the way that you're pursuing people to talk about the Lord with them. We don't have to have the answers. We don't have to curate these beautiful moments of breaking people down and asking these questions that cause them to weep or cause them to respond in such a way. But we just get to be with them and get to show them like, hey, I do see you, friend. I want to know about you. And I want you to know that you have intrinsic value, not because of what you bring, not because of your job, not because of where you're from, not because of where you live, but because of who you are deeply. It is a gift to get to go there with people. But I also tell you this, that there is a space in which like use wisdom and discernment because, hey, not every single person you have to go extremely deep with. You don't need to know every single person's depth of their life and their sin and their struggles and their trauma, but simultaneously just use discernment of, okay, how can I ask a question that can like make someone just feel a little bit better, and make someone feel just a little bit more known, and make it known that like I'm for this person and I'm cheering and rooting them on, and it doesn't have to be this like the deepest thing ever. It can just be that I'm just being like loving and wise, and people will respond to the depth of your question depending on how much they trust you. And that's okay. Like it is a skill. It is a place of learning trust. There are people in my life that I'm very, very close with that if they ask me certain questions, I will want to lie. Because yeah, there's some things that are just hard to talk about and some things that I just don't want to touch. So just know that is also a space as well. The last thing that I'll say just as I'm wrapping up is if you are wondering where exactly to start, if you're like, I don't really ask questions. If I do, it's to my phone, or to TikTok of how to do things and how to go about life and all the things. I want to just challenge you, friend. Start asking questions, not necessarily to friends, not necessarily to coworkers, not to people that you want to go deeper with. Start asking questions to Jesus. He is a kind and loving and beautiful God that can hold our deepest questions. When we're like, oh, like I'm asking questions and I'm scared of the answer. Maybe that's why we don't want to ask questions to people at times or things like that. But Jesus is so incredible, and that we can ask him all of the questions and he can hold all of it. And he can hold our discomfort and he can hold our distrust, and the spaces that we might have doubt because we're like, Lord, what are you doing? But just practice asking him questions because it creates trust. It really does. I have asked Jesus on numerous occasions, what are you doing in my life? And why are you doing it this way? And I don't like this. And when are we going to be done? And he hasn't necessarily always answered me. Sometimes he has through his word and through just other people in my life and through his spirit. But sometimes it's just like, no, this is where we're at. And it sucks. But it does create trust of like, I can ask God anything. And there's nothing that I can ask him that is going to make him leave. And so just know that man, there might be situations or relationships in which you're like, oh, like I feel like I can't ask that, or I need to use discernment and caution, but that's not Jesus. And he is constantly asking you the question of just come to me. Like he's at like, will you just come to me? Will you just bring me everything? And so today, answer him if you haven't. Respond to that question, but also know that he is a God who can hold all of your questions. And he holds all the answers. He can hold our questions. He is a loving God who asks us questions to deepen our trust in him. We have the freedom and the ability and the capacity to love people well and to our absolute fullest as we just, ask intentional questions, friends. So just know that that it's not hard, that you are not alone, and that it is not a skill that is going to take a long time. It's a muscle that needs to be exercised and worked out, but it doesn't take long. It's not hard. Start this week. Ask a coworker a question of, okay, like not like, what are you doing this weekend, but what's your favorite thing about the weekend? What's the best part of being off? You know, ask those questions and just watch and hear a little bit more about them and learn something new. Be curious, seek to learn, seek to know people. And in return, know that you are fully known and fully loved, and you are fully sought out as well. So this is Girl Say the Podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in and talking about how to ask questions, what it looks like, why it's a lost art, and how we can get it back. Like I said, this goes hand in hand with hospitality. As we welcome people in, we also welcome them in to hear their stories, to hear their lives, and to get to know who they are. So as we get to know other people, we also get to remember who Jesus is and remember that we too are loved and known and that our stories are worth being heard. So thank you so much for tuning in. You are loved and seen. Bye, friends.